Oh, hi, Julian T. I was.
Hello.
Just the three of us.
Hopefully more people will come. It's never quite the same now as when we were in lockdown.
Everybody's got too much on there, haven't they?
Yeah.
Thanks for that
Good morning,
spreadsheet,
yeah.
Robin. Thank you.
Yeah. No worries. Hi, Simon. How are you?
Hi, good. And yourself?
Okay. Yes. How are things over there?
Well, it's quiet. This Omicron has been a bit of a disaster this winter, so we're just hoping things will start picking up from, say, March, because even February is looking slow. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. Still affecting the industry, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping this is the last of it. It should be anyway. It doesn't seem to be that strong now.
Yeah.
It's just the numbers, but I mean, it's not leaving any catastrophes behind it.
That's good.
So we'll see. So how was your New Year and Christmas? All good?
Fine. Quiet. Quiet. Not many parties going on over Christmas and New Year.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Makes a difference, even work-wise. Normally it's the busiest period, and it's gone so quiet.
Yeah. Morning, Guy. How are you?
Not bad, Robin. Yourself?
All right.
Morning, Guy.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning, Martin.
Morning. How's it?
Okay. Looking very. Are you in a garden or somewhere?
No, I'm in a coffee shop. It's not quite garden weather here yet,
Well, I wouldn't want to make you jealous, but it's nice and sunny here.
I had nice and sunny for too long. I got bored. I enjoy the cool temperatures now. At least this is what I tell myself.
Yes. Yeah. So
it's been nice blue skies in January here. It's been lovely. It's not been like January weather. I think when you're absolutely freezing, it's been quite dry. Now there's blue sky with some white clouds. It could be like 25 degrees out there. It's not, but it does look
yes.
It does look it.
Bit deceptive. It's quite chilly out there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's Just wait for. We should have about 20 odd people.
Yeah, also still waiting for Peter to join. We're gonna try and do this jointly. So I'm gonna start. I'll move the slides forward. So I have the sharing already, but he's gonna do most of the talking.
You better. I don't know if he joined at 9:30 and then went off again. I don't know whether. So then if you have to give him a little
odd story. Let me
just to make sure.
Let me send him an email.
Here he comes.
Fair enough.
Here we go. Starting to people coming in. Morning, Peter. Morning, Dave.
Good morning, all.
Hello, Julian. I wasn't sure if you were with us or not.
I am now with you physically, if you see what I mean. Not always mentally, but physically. How are you doing? How's everybody? Happy New Year. All of the above.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Let's say we've had a quiet Christmas in the industry.
We've had a quiet Christmas. Lucky you. We had vast numbers of people here Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and New Year's Eve, and then disappeared to Wales for a few days to get away from people in general, which is quite easy to do in Wales, if I'm not offending anybody, but it was quite possible to do it.
So you've been climbing Mount Snowdon, have you?
Oh, good.
No, I didn't climb anything at all. I have to say.
What about the stairwell? Did you manage to get up that, or had you had a few too many?
No, I managed, but I did manage to get up the steps out of the pool, so that was okay. There were 5 of those, and I managed that on a daily basis, so that was all right.
Wow! So you've got an indoor swimming pool, have you, Julian?
Well, where we were staying, put it that way.
Oh, right.
Did you see any dragons?
No.
That's yeah, Wales. You see, I mean, you know, it's rain, dragons, and Cathawaita Citron. Surely, I mean, you know, well, I mean, without wanting to offend anyone from Wales, but
Well,
that's really what it is.
There was a stone version of one on the side of the road as you go into Wales, but yes, so technically yes. There you go.
No, you see. No, I mean, I don't know. I've never managed to go to Wales and it didn't rain. But then I think the year it must have been sort of just a year before the pandemic and all of this stuff. I had a friend who went and she said, I really want to go to Wales. I said, you know, disaster, it always rains. And she went for 2 weeks and she had the nicest weather for like 2 weeks. And they spent like 2 weeks by the beach in Wales and it is absolutely stunning. I was like, well, you know, sorry, haven't managed yet.
It will happen. Give it another chance.
No, it's yes, it's the problem with Wales is it's got lots of mountains, so it stops the rain before it gets to England.
has it got any long place names? Because my Welsh is not very fluent. I can just about spell Agagrenni in Welsh, but there are longer.
Are you referring to Llanfair, Pwcwing, Gogerech, Hundrabeg, Llantysilio, Gogogo?
Yes. Yes.
Peter, say no. Say no. At all.
But what about the train station? Does it have that sign up?
Yes. Yeah. The sign's there when you arrive at the train station.
All the way along the platform.
Yeah. They just painted it on the platform itself, you know.
Yeah.
But which reminds me, like in Dubai, they once changed the name of the street and they made it a really long name. And those street signs along the street, I mean, they were essentially blocking your view on the houses because I mean they were so long then that you know it became a bit of a joke. But yeah.
Right. Oh, we're just getting a couple more people coming in. Morning. Oh, Joan's there in physics now. Morning, Philippa.
Good morning, although I can't see anyone.
You're not wearing Ray-Bans, are you, Philippa? Is that?
I can now. It all disappeared for a moment. How is everyone?
So, okay. So, how's the industry doing over Christmas? Has everybody else sort of experienced sort of a low business level over this period, or have there been some successes?
It's a hard question.
Anyone raising a hand for success? Oh, cat. Oh, there's always one cat.
The week commencing the 10th of January saw not a big surge compared to 2019 or 2020, but a definite surge in business travel, with conferences and people even getting the train into London. It was noticeable getting the Piccadilly line from Heathrow into the centre of town. I was looking around seeing those people are definitely business travelers, and seeing the bookings pick up. But it didn't happen that first week, but the week commencing the 10th was a marked jump in bookings. So cautiously optimistic.
This is what they call the Boris Johnson effect.
What is the Boris Johnson effect? Discuss, or preferably don't. I don't know.
Move on.
We don't swear on this forum.
Better not.
Okay. Well, glad you all can join us. And I'll hand over to Martin and Peter to enlighten us as with respect to recruitment and recruiting, the possibilities for recruitment in the wider world.
Well, tally ho! I'm going to start this off, and I will then hand over to Peter. And my only job then is to forward the slides. So let me just share this in one second. It'll help if I just open slideshow view. Okay.
Have I set it to share? Just one second.
Yes, I have sharing.
Okay.
You should all be able to see this now. So, so what we want to talk about? Oh, this is what we called it. We called it hidden talents. Okay, I want to talk a bit about neurodiversity, and particularly neurodiversity in terms of recruitment, in terms of hiring, but also in terms of managing employees. And because I assume that many people were like me and really have no clear idea what neurodiversity is, we're going to talk a little bit about that too at the beginning. Okay, so this is just to ramble on here, but how did it all start, right? So at some stage during the lockdowns and the various forums that sprung up online, including this one and others, I bumped into Peter, and at the next online forum, I bumped into him again, and you know, so we all listened to each other, and I was like, well, he is a gentleman who clearly has experience, but he seems a bit odd, if I say that myself, you know. And I couldn't really sort of make anything of it, and then I really didn't bother anymore with it. And so then two things happened. Peter very kindly joined one of my mentoring sessions where I had no mentors, no mentees at all, and I was just sitting around in an empty online space. And that gave us a chance to have a really good one-to-one conversation. And he said, "Have you ever heard about neurodiversity?" And I said, "No, I haven't. What is it?" And then so you know, he started to tell me about the whole subject as it were, and that's what became when for me sort of many things became very clear when I started to understand so people I've come across in the past better, okay, and where I to some extent also felt like, oh, okay, so now now I understand, but I also felt a little bit like, why didn't I bother to understand this earlier? Okay, so what we're talking about here, the concept of neurodiversity is really neurological differences between people, and it's about recognizing and respecting those differences, just as we're already respecting and recognizing differences in terms of race, in terms of gender, in terms of physical abilities. Okay? So obviously comes from Latin, the word in terms of neuro, that is relating to nerves and the nervous system. Diversity being the fact that we're not all the same, and diverse itself, saying that there is a great diversity, a great variety, and very many differences that there are. But in the end, okay, in the end, we're all the same. Just like two people rarely have the same physical abilities. Also, two people will rarely have the same two brains, as it were. So what we're talking about here is things that are labeled as dyspraxia, dyslexia, attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, anything on the autistic spectrum, Tourette syndrome, and a number of other conditions for the best, for the want of a better word. So we're talking about things that are by and large difficult to spot. Okay, look, it's very easy to spot your physical disability. It's very easy to spot things like gender and race, but it is much more difficult to spot neurodiversity or neurodiverse conditions, and because of that, there are issues here. Firstly, in terms of statistics, which is where it all starts. Okay, chances are that you already know a neurodiverse person. If anyone is an avid Netflix watcher and has and likes the old detective series and the old crime series, there's a series out there called The Bridge, which is set on the bridge between Denmark and Sweden, and features a detective team where the Swedish detective very clearly is on the spectrum. So that's just an example from the movies, but because it's by and large harder to spot, also means that diagnosis rates vary widely between countries, as do the criteria. Generally, women and girls, for example, are much less likely to be diagnosed, particularly with autism or ADHD. People of color are less likely to get an accurate diagnosis. Okay, and very often, and I personally find this also a bit of a shame. So this is all classified as disabled. Okay, as having special needs. It might be learning difficulties or sort of other disorders, where in reality, or very often, and this is what we want to talk really about in this session, is that it's not so much special needs. Is that they is unique strength and unique abilities, and this, when it comes to the recruitment process and when it comes to managing people process, can be of huge benefit to companies. And with that, I'm going to hand you over to Peter, and I'm just going to forward the slides as and when he tells me to. Peter, take it on. Just let me know when you want me to click the button here.
Yeah, hi everybody. My condition is called Asperger's. It's called the Asperger's syndrome, and I got diagnosed with this about 8 years back. It was quite a revelation. Basically, Martin's outlined the conditions. So they're really what I call labels. And actually, there is quite a bit of diverse thinking, learning, processing and behaving by people on this particular spectrum of diversity, neurodiversity. What I have noticed is a lot of organizations have what's called an equal opportunities program, and people disclose their disabilities, and generally it seems that only about 3% of their workforce has a disability, whereas in reality it could be between 10 and 15. There is a reason why people don't disclose it. It's normally held against them. Next slide, please. Yes, so one of the big things about having neurodiverse disabilities is that you suffer from what's called in the trade meltdowns. Okay, you can be over or under sensitive to smells, lights, colors. This does give a problem because when you melt down, you need to go and rest a while, and employers are not happy about employees that need to be taking frequent rest breaks. The other problem is to actually read people. The facial cues are quite hard to interpret, and sometimes you can accidentally offend people. The other thing is how long is a piece of string? You could spend weeks, months on a project that might actually only take a week. Time management and time planning is a big problem. Secondly, is actually recognizing people's names. I personally used to have a big wall chart with everybody's name and picture, and I needed those two pieces of information so that I could politely call somebody by their surname or first name. A lot of people don't generally identify as neurodiverse. It's generally frowned upon, and a lot of people revert to what I call the feeble-minded option. Oh, he must be, she must be feebly minded, and therefore they talk down to you. Warning people or employers that you want reasonable accommodation does ring some alarm bells. Next slide, please. So, I mean, airports are particularly troublesome. The airlines are very geared to people that use wheelchairs. If you have a physical disability, they'll wheel you right through the system, through the back gates, the back doors. If you are affected by bright lights, heavy noise, and background with a lot of announcements, actually, it's very difficult for you to get to the right gate in time to catch your connection. But some of the airlines are now getting up to speed. There is some reading there on the National Geographic. Next slide, please. So a lot of people on the spectrum are actually long-term unemployed. They actually generally end up working as a volunteer in charity shops. There are a few that are defined as geeks or nerds, and they're basically put in a back room and have to get on with number crunching. So there are some issues in social interaction and communication. Employers sometimes are not very honest, and they don't like to be factual with people in case they offend them. Also, there's a lot of meetings in the workplace, and quite frankly, these pre-Zoom were often dominated by extroverts. But if you are quiet, you can easily get overlooked. There is also a problem on the speed of different thinkers. So we have what's called high functioning and low functioning people on the spectrum. One thing that is very important, particularly in the hospitality industry, is what we call the team working and team spirit. And often people on the spectrum are considered to be loners, and they're generally not included in the social small chit chat or the office outings, office parties. Next slide, please. Well, how about some value that neurodiverse employees can bring? I think employers need to deal with somebody that has disclosed on a one-to-one basis. But actually, you could find that you could get some very good out-of-the-box thinking and some very creative solutions to your particular work study or work plans, because there is a different way of thinking. And so a lot of neurodiverse people could give lots of suggestions, hints and tints about simplifying the business process and maybe making some innovative products or services. So, for example, in Los Angeles, Stockholm and Copenhagen, some IT companies only hire people on the spectrum because they find that they are really doing and finding problems before they actually arise. Next slide, please. So seeing things before they exist, reorganizing work programs, getting bogged down in the detail of things so they can do a work analysis or person spec analysis, looking at the core business, which is quite important. But the problem is that they don't know the unwritten rules in the workplace. And so they don't know what is taboo and what are the boundaries. So generally, trying to help them improve awareness, they are very good at looking for patterns. So particularly in manufacturing or the likes. And they can be quite deep thinkers. So if you want a consultant, whatever. Next slide, please. Now, this is a resource we're going to share with you. It is a video clip of an actress that has dyslexia. And that is well worth looking at because she then gives what she calls the power of dyslexia, the gift of dyslexia. Next slide, please. So Germany is well ahead of the curve in terms of dealing with diversity and neurodiverse people. They've got Autocom, which is an IT company, again, looking for geeks and nerds in the neurodiverse population. Also, they've got Diversicom, which will help people to get into the workforce. Here, you've only got the disability officer at the job center, and a lot of employers are not very happy to hire neurodiverse people. Also, a Rising Tide is another one you could look at. And there it's good for low functioning autism people because they can really, if they've got the right tools, do a great job on something as simple as cleaning cars. Next slide, please. So some employers are realizing that there is an untapped resource out there. Dell and Microsoft are ahead of the game. They are looking for people to do software analysis for them. Some of the big accounting companies are also looking, as well as other IT companies. That's quite a good resource that you'll have for looking at any initiatives. There could be some money out of it. Next slide, please. Okay, so it's really rare that disabilities are truly invisible. You generally do pick up. It's hard to adjust because there are a lot of fears and unease from co-workers about working and dealing with divergent people. There's a lot of myths, assumptions, and stereotypes which are flagged out in the media. But disability is often the way that society is organized, and differences are not really liked. So a lot of people on the spectrum actually spend a lot of time in what I call masking, on trying to look normal. But they do suffer sensory overload, and they do need to get included. And just because somebody is wearing noise cancelling headphones doesn't mean that they're listening to heavy rock music at work. They're basically trying to center down and focus on the work. Okay, next slide, please.
There is no more. This is kind of, we have reached the end. You've already summed it up to some extent, and I mean, I would just like, because there's some sort of way is a cooperation here between Peter and me. So I mean, I just think, having previously not given much thought about this, okay, but obviously having spent considerable time to make recruitment in my hotels more diverse, in terms of the obvious, the visible things. Right? People who know me better, they know that I'm very quick to point out if somebody is running a conference where they have a panel and there is not a single woman, or there's only one woman on the panel. Okay, you know, I'm usually one of these people who will say like, what, you didn't find a woman to include on your panel, or you know, so this type of stuff. But then the invisible side never really occurred to me. So that's one thing. The other thing is, look, if we want to be welcoming, which of course is our job in hospitality, if you want to be welcoming and if you want to attract guests to our hotels, to our properties, to our restaurants, then it just makes sense if they are if we have diverse teams that match the diversity of our guests, right? Everybody feels more at ease if they're being attended to, or if they're being served, or if they encounter somebody in a place where they say, oh, I feel this person comes from where I'm coming from. This person really understands me. So there are potentially huge benefits from that side too. Because I spent a lot of time looking at change and innovation in the industry, the point that Peter mentioned in terms of neurodiverse people thinking about things in a different manner is additionally very interesting to me, because very often you are in an environment, you spend a lot of time in this environment, and you become sort of blind to how you could do things differently. And if you then have somebody who looks at things from a really different angle, look, you know, it might turn out to be complete and utter rubbish, but it might also turn out to be absolutely brilliant and something that you've never thought about. So that for me is also is another very important point. Questions and answers. I'm just reading through the chat here. Somebody said, yeah, wait, who is this? Oh, John said that. They're about to hire a highly functional autistic girl. Okay, so right. Another said, fascinating. Perhaps this knowledge should be part of mental health awareness training. I don't know, Peter. Do you think that there should be this should be included in mental health awareness training?
Well, I'm not quite sure. Mental health has a certain connotation. So, for example, if suddenly your GP writes a sick note to say you're suffering from depression, that you usually find there's a P45 heading your way sometime soon. But mental first aid is something we could put it under a general banner. I think it could be more on what I call the equal opportunities training framework.
I agree. I think by putting it into this sort of mental health awareness training, you're pushing this into the wrong box, as it were. And I'm not saying that mental health isn't important. It is, okay. But I don't think this will fit super well in there. I think it really ought to sit in training and sort of culture of diversity. Okay, this is what we as an organization are setting out to be. Okay, I think that's where it would sit.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the diversity initiatives quite often focus on gender or race. That is, and then there are photographs taken of the diversified workforce. But obviously, if you have an invisible disability, the photograph won't really reveal the diversity. So that is a problem. But I keep hearing that the hospitality industry is short on staff, and you've got all of these people sat at home working in a charity shop, actively looking for work, and because they've had so many turn downs, they're sort of like under the carpet.
Do we I mean, does the hospitality industry have a fear of, you know, it's the same as, it's not just about that disabled people or diverse people. It's like, oh, you can't work in, we don't want black people in this particular establishment, or we don't want gay people in this club. Are we too worried about the type of people we actually have working for us? Do you think the customer really cares? Do you know what I mean? Do you think?
I don't know. I think I know what you mean, because I was or my wife was part of the recruitment process for the pre-opening of the Armani Hotel in Dubai, and that was possibly one of the most racist and undiverse recruitment processes I've ever been aware of. Okay, every single employee had to look like, they had to fit into an Armani suit, essentially, and a full, like every employee, like every applicant had to submit a full length picture of themselves, and it would be sent to Italy, and it would come back saying, this one's too fat, this one's too black, this one is to this one is to that. Okay, so in the end, you ended up with lots of beautiful people who were utterly dumb, who didn't know what a hotel was, who didn't know, because they might have worked in a fashion, they might have worked in an Armani boutique before, right? And that's why they were hired. But you ask them, can you bring me an iron? Sorry, what is an iron? Like you know, zero customer service. So I think some brands perhaps are like that. But overall, I feel that we I mean, there are also positive examples. Like in Sweden, we have a fast food chain here that's about as big, if not bigger, as McDonald's, and they have written into their values, into their culture, that they are going to employ people with all sorts of disabilities, so long as they can work, and that includes also neurodiverse conditions.
What do people think then about positive discrimination to build inclusivity into companies?
Just quickly, I mean, I don't want to just talk over people, but positive discrimination is an interesting, I find an interesting concept. Okay, I was part a couple of years ago. I was part of a discussion group about positive discrimination in terms of women in leadership positions in the hospitality. Okay, I didn't speak, obviously, but I was part of a group that put together this event, and the panel was all female, and they were also split. Okay, because some felt that I don't want to be let us say positively discriminated, so that I then end up in a job where I think like, hey, did I only get here because of being a woman, or because of being this, or because of being that? Okay, no, I want to know that I got here because of my skills, because of what I can bring. Having said that, of course, to some extent, legislation or a little bit of force can help to actually create to sort of make companies, because companies, much like a lot of people, are just lazy. If they don't absolutely have to do it, they will not do it. Right? So if we give a bit of a push to get that process kick-started, once you have a couple of people in the right position, it will then take on a momentum, and we might not need positive discrimination going forward. That's my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, we could use some role models. That might be one way forward. I mean, has anybody heard of Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs or Bill Gates? Are these people known? Because they have a condition called Asperger's.
Mm. Somebody suggested, I wonder if it's fear by the employer of the employee with filtering challenges getting the business in trouble. Personally, I think it's perhaps not even about this specific issue. I think it's generally fear. Okay, you've got to, like, you might not want to look stupid. Okay, you might not want to admit that you don't know. Okay, and because it is not something that you can see, look, it's easy enough to say, Talio, here's an employee who only has one leg. Therefore, we need to make an accommodation for that in terms of our back office areas and such on and so forth. Right? Fair enough. You don't need to necessarily ask too many questions about that. But here we're faced with conditions that are all extremely different and can present themselves in a multitude of shades. Okay, so you need to ask questions, and I think a lot of people are probably uncomfortable with that. Yes, exactly. This is what Alan says. Like, problem is that it's not the guests or the clients that worry, it's the management and the supervisory level that are either not aware or that have little time to understand these conditions and the effects. Yeah, that's I would agree with that.
Alan, you're in the whole recruitment side of things. What do you think can be done to sort of to make this to improve the situation with this type of recruitment?
It's a situation I've wrestled with for a while, because my youngest son is now 21. He's autistic and on the spectrum, and we've had his lifetime of getting to grips with the cause and effects of what happens, socially awkward situations. And yet, a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic started, we went away to Menorca for a holiday with him, and his behavior completely changed in a different environment, with the staff at the hotel, with the animation team who do all the entertainments on these resorts. He was involved with them from day one, whereas back here, getting him to meet people or even saying good morning to people in a situation where you couldn't understand why he had to do that has always been a bit of a challenge. And I guess I go back to my time when I was younger, as a 17, 21-year-old in the industry. We never really had these conditions. They didn't seem to exist. You were either socially awkward or just shy or not a good team player. So the management and supervisory would push those people away from frontline operations, and you then end up in the back room or housekeeping or somewhere like that, where you were out of harm's way, I think. But it has been a lot of, as you say, this is particularly relevant to my situation, because things have changed as he's now left school. And the industry or the society seems to say to people, you're now out of the school system, you're cured. You go off and become an adult. Well, you don't. You still have those same vulnerable issues, the likes of Steve Jobs, or as he had, or even Elon Musk. There are clearly indicators or personality traits that people still see him as odd. But how we get the industry to relate to that, I guess only through things like this. It's far more relevant now, where the need for more staff, and staff who are loyal, who can maybe 5 days out of 7 or 4 days out of 5 deal with the situations they're faced with. I think it's just down to education and talking about it. People don't seem to, or still seem to shy away from it. I think people are afraid of the condition. Once they know someone has Asperger's or autism in some form, there's a reluctance to engage. And I don't know how we get over that almost racial-like quality of dealing with racial issues from years past. I think it's just a difficult one, but I think it is making an inroad. But I think we've got a long way to go before we can get the employers to wake up and see that there are intelligent people. You mentioned certain companies looking for people like this. Even the Israeli intelligence agency Mossad looks for people with Asperger's and autism to become code breakers and detailed analysts. So whether that's a role for revenue management or reservations, there's just clearly a need to recognize that the skill sets come with a certain condition that we need to understand and be cognizant of. I don't know how we get there quickly, but I think we can do it.
I think in general, from my experience, you hit on one word as well. I've found that people who have got some sort of disability or whatever, and are actually welcomed into an operation, are actually the most dependable and the most the ones you can depend on most, the ones that will always work for the go for the company and all that. It's a strange anomaly that actually the people who you can employ, who actually will be your best employees, actually people don't want to employ them. It's very strange.
It's just a strangeness, because there's a hotel near me where they have a chap who's clearly got Asperger's, who's been with the hotel through 3 different owners. It's only a small one, there's sort of 45 bedrooms. And I meet a lot of people there for coffees and so on. He's the first one to come up and say hello. And he's almost like a, how can I put it, not wanting to be derogatory, almost like being bounded upon by a fresh sort of puppy approach. He's really pleased to see everybody and goes out of his way to make you feel welcome. And yet you can see the new management, when they took over recently, there was a reticence and an almost embarrassment about his behavior, until I had a word with one of the new management and said, look, no, he's your best asset, leave him alone. He will certainly be here for you probably long after you've gone. And he must have worked there 25, 35 years now, sort of man and boy, but a more normal, wonderful person, puts a smile on your face, very guest welcoming, and you can forgive him some foibles, whether it be invoice relating or getting bills and so on. Other people can do that with him, and I think he's an absolute asset. But how you get that change of mindset in a management company or an HR perspective, who might think, oh, this chap's got that, he's declared it, this chap hasn't, so I'll take that one because it's going to be less work. There's almost that issue that we have to get over. And I guess the more people that get exposed to these people, perhaps there is a genuinely a more appreciative understanding of what they have to offer. But it is a shame, as Martin was saying, the industry is crying out for people. You've got people who are capable of doing this, who are probably still being sidelined as a result of a recognised or perceived condition.
Alan, you raised a really interesting, sorry, it's Julian, you raised a really interesting point just then, didn't you? So you flagged that your son, who can be quieter, more reserved, and yet that individual that you just spoke about, who's very forward, you know, and smiley face, and it highlights, just in simple terms, highlights the massive difference in people who have these different conditions. So my youngest son is very high functioning, autistic, and has ADHD.
Nice.
And we were at a school meeting yesterday, just going through some bits and pieces, and somebody who just helps him on occasion through bits and pieces at school was very quick to point out, you know, if you had a child who was in a wheelchair, using this, you know, very visual impact, child in a wheelchair, you would not ask that child to get out of their wheelchair and run 100 meters. You have an autistic child who, on sports day, in a chaotic environment, for that individual, the environment is chaotic, you know, and you're asking them to run 100 meters. No, I can't process this. I don't want to do it. I feel out of my comfort zone. I'm not comfortable. Close down. Yeah, exactly. And so it's this enormous diversity, if you will. And so finding within hospitality, within the enormous range of roles that are there, finding the right roles to fit the right people, so that the individuals can flourish, the business can benefit, and if nothing else, it highlights the need of trying to put the right person in the right place at the right time, matching needs of the business, matching needs of the individual for the benefit of everybody. And we all know that that spectrum, that range of that spectrum is so wide that it's not easy to fit people into positions. But by goodness gracious me, by understanding people through talking, through interview process, whatever the interview is, you can get to the bottom of this, and you can find roles, not for everybody, because not everybody is for every industry, but you can find roles where individuals will flourish and where the business will flourish.
Yes.
And it takes an intelligent employer to realize that process.
Yeah. And I think it's also just so intelligent employers need to recognize that there will be cause and effects depending on certain situations. I mean, we realized very early on when we had sort of children's birthday parties that the one person sitting on the stairs away from the crowd was himself at his own party, and we kind of realized there was an issue there. So certainly, you know, putting someone into you can run the staff disco today is not going to work, because it's going to be a sensory overload and will close down for two or 3 days at least.
Yes,
it's just being aware of those sort of situations. I don't know how or whether the industry as yet at middle management level has the patience or the tolerance, the pressure that they might be under to be able to, okay, I recognize this, I'll need to deal with him or her. It'll take me another 20 minutes to have that conversation and move them somewhere else while we address that sort of sensory issue.
Well, absolutely. But I mean, getting back to the bottom line, which is what businesses want to minimize costs or increase sales. There is a scheme, if you're UK, and we mentioned some in Germany, it's called the Access to Work scheme. And the Department of Work and Pensions will put quite a lot of money, up to about £20,000, to assist somebody that has a disability to slot into the workplace. And it could be a whole range of things you're able to claim. So it could be really helping the bottom line as well. People often look at costs and benefits with these staff members, and they think that there might be a burden, but some do come with a big pot of money. And employers don't seem to be tapping into this access to work scheme.
True. I think maybe they just can't see the bigger picture yet. I think they're still worried about the effects more so on their own customers, who don't seem to have the issues that perhaps the management and supervisory guys do.
But I think also to some extent it's funny, because if you like in many cases now, if you are tendering, like if you're replying to an RFP, this is for hotels, if you're replying to an RFP, you have very strict there are many points which go beyond the actual accommodation and the provision of services, and these might be health and safety things, but it might also be for a lot of the large international the international companies, they might also be diverse things. Okay, like do you have like you know, how many women do you have in leadership, blah blah blah, implying that look, we want to stay in hotels that that are diverse places, because we as an organization want to support that. So in the end, of course, the money talks. This is one way of supporting things, right?
Yes.
But by putting your money where your mouth is. But this also never covers these type of things. I mean, you never see an RFP that says how many neurodiverse people do you employ? Do you employ in your organization, right? Like it will also never ask about the things like, I mean, it will say like, what facilities do you have in place for people in a wheelchair, or what facilities do you have in place for blind people or deaf people? This type of thing. Always they ask you for this, okay? But they never ask you about other things. The other week I read an article about a supermarket. I think it was in the UK. Or it was in Germany. I forgot now. Anyway, the whole point was that they now have once a week they have 2 hours where they switch off all the background music, all the store announcements, all the bright flashing lights, to make it a quiet shopping experience. And they actually put up signs explaining all of this. And you know, this is not going to fix the world. This is not going to like you know, but and there might only be like 5 people who actually benefit from it, but I like say more people will benefit from it because they're being exposed to that. Okay, they might have never known that this is an issue for some people. So then by going to the shop and saying, hang on a second, what's happening here? You know, there is no music, there is no announcements, and then they read the sign and say, oh, okay. Then they start to, you know, it always takes something to kick off that thinking process, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we do it with disabled people, as you say, with bathrooms, wheel ramps, and we embraced all of that, but we just haven't embraced the mental issues that are there in front of us, but we just don't want to seem to acknowledge.
Well, absolutely. I mean, so for example, a supermarket is a very stressful place for a neurodiverse person, and it's made even more stressful because what happens is the store detectives are watching on CCTV the customers walking through, and they end up following people on the spectrum because they're exhibiting the same coups as shoplifters. And so they have a problem when they get to checkout, in that they are deemed to have been shoplifting. Even me personally, I've had my bag searched, and because I'm meticulous about receipts, but it can be quite an intimidating experience. And hotels also possibly the same. And security, obviously, quite rightly, looking for unusual behavior.
Yeah, it's deviations from the normal behavior. I mean, the irony here is my older son is a store detective security with Tesco's. We've got both sides of the spectrum covered there. But yeah, that's true, because people do in hotels look at abnormal behavior.
There's a touch of poacher to gamekeeper there, Alan.
But I mean,
I used to have black hair. Yeah.
But so, you know, even some of the professional bodies are offering diversity shields, but the shield wearers are normally based on gender, race, or sexual orientation.
Yes. It's almost a visual acceptance of the differences, perhaps not the unforeseen ones.
Because also because I mean, it's not just about the visible and invisible, it's also about personally I find it's also about the easiness of being able to explain it. Okay. And the physical disabilities are just easier to explain in that sense. Right. Usually something has happened to you and as a result XYZ is impossible, right? Whereas with neurodiverse conditions, it's just as I also before, you know, said there is just so many more nuances out there than with physical disabilities.
Well, absolutely. Have you heard of this chain? It's called Travel Chef. They like to hire people with dyslexia. You know. So there are lots of gifts out there. It is a hidden world, but quite frankly, people don't get through the interview process and don't get hired. That is a problem. There is a big proportion of people that end up having to live on disability allowances and universal credit, and it is such a waste of resources, particularly as we're getting short of people now in the hospitality industry.
I think the problem is that these days, when somebody is promoted through a business, it's very rare that they even get trained how to interview a normal person. Never mind how to interview somebody who might have actually some kind of diversity or whatever. You know, they just don't understand the intricacies of actually doing a decent interview. So they kind of just shy away from anything that causes an inconvenience when they're rather than actually.
Very true.
Yeah.
Yes. Very true.
But, it was interesting though what you said. At the moment, everybody's talking about sustainability, and yes, sort of companies are saying, well, how sustainable are you if I want to come and stay with you? It needs to be more a case of, well, yeah, the clients themselves almost need to be encouraged to say, well, how diverse are you? You know, how many people do you have working for you who have a disability or this or the other? And it's sort of like it seems the only way to actually make the companies change their vision is actually the clients changing it for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, some of these logos, like the 2 ticks scheme for guaranteeing an interview, are the disability confident employers are mainly awarded by the Department of Work and Pensions, but actually they don't really vet them. It's just one of the many badges that organizations do on the public relations front, unfortunately, and that is a great shame. But food for thought. I mean, Are there any forums for human resource professionals in the hospitality industry? Do they have? Well, maybe I could rock along and give them an insight as well. I don't know what they're called.
Certainly worth a look at. There are a few around, to be fair. I think some companies have their own, but there are a few industry bodies connected to hospitality and personnel, the old school. We'll have to look them up.
It's an interesting point because if you surveyed, and I'll pick on just one category here, but if you surveyed all chefs within the United Kingdom, you're going to come back with quite a few with ADHD as an example.
Quite a few sociopaths as well, I imagine. But yeah.
Well, possibly, but it's true, because certain characteristics, certain traits, drive certain behaviours, and there are certain behaviours in certain roles in our industry which are exceptionally positive. Speed, focus. I can deliver practical things. I can deliver visual things. But don't ask me to do all the paperwork behind it. Get someone else to do that. But when it comes down to it, at the coalface, or at the hot plate in this instance, you need people who have that drive and that motivation. And goodness gracious me, there are enough 100%. Out there. So this is not new. This is about bringing to the forefront of the mind what actually exists in your workplace today. Peter, I was just thinking of that, that angle and that presentation almost. I'm not telling you anything. I'm not telling you anything new. You have this in your workplace today. What I'm telling you is bring it to the forefront of your mind. Maybe that's an angle.
Yep. It's certainly a question I'll be asking more often now about the neurodiversity of the levels of where you're getting your staff from, and what sort of people would you take and wouldn't take, and why not.
I've got to jump off. I just want to say for myself, thanks a lot,
thank you.
And thank you to Peter for really sort of making me understand this issue and being up for doing this together. So as Peter also said, we've put a number of links into the deck, clickable resources that people can use. So when you get the deck from Robin, do click. And other than that, thanks to Robin for organizing, and I hope to see you in the next session again.
Very much look forward to it. Thank you, Martin.
Have a continuous good discussion. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you very much, both of you. Well, we're virtually on the hour as well, so
wow.
So I think we'll call it day for today. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining. I'll send out the summary later on, and look forward to seeing you again in about a month's time.
Super.
Definitely.
Robin,
thank you. That was great.
Robin.
That was really excellent, Robin, and everybody. Really, really excellent. Loved it.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed
Robin,